Nike thought they were ready. They had prepared warehouses, stocked inventory, stress-tested servers. They had done this 1,000 times before with the biggest names in sports. Veterans, champions, icons, they knew what a successful launch looked like. They had the playbook memorized. Then Shedeur Sanders happened. Within minutes of his merchandise going live, everything collapsed. Servers crashed. Inventory vanished. Distribution networks buckled under pressure nobody anticipated. Before some stores even unlocked their doors, internal reports were already flooding with sellout alerts. This wasn't supposed to happen. Not like this. Not this fast. And definitely not for a rookie who hadn't played a single regular season snap in the NFL. Somewhere in Oregon, Nike executives scrambled into emergency meetings. Somewhere else, competitors watched in disbelief as a 22-year-old quarterback rewrote their entire understanding of athlete marketing overnight. What you're about to hear isn't just a story about merchandise sales. It's a blueprint, a case study in how one young man turned confidence, authenticity, and relentless preparation into a cultural earthquake that nobody saw coming. And by the end, you'll understand exactly why the sports world will never look at rookie branding the same way again. The countdown ended. The SS Crown merchandise officially went live. And for exactly 11 minutes, everything worked perfectly. Orders processed smoothly. Confirmation emails fired. Nike's digital infrastructure hummed along as designed. Then the wave hit. Traffic surged beyond anything the system anticipated. According to insiders, the demand wasn't just higher than projected. It multiplied so fast that monitoring dashboards couldn't keep pace. Servers buckled. Pages froze. Thousands of buyers found themselves trapped in endless loading loops, refreshing screens, praying their carts hadn't emptied. Meanwhile, Nike's backend was in chaos. Distribution centers reported complete inventory wipeouts within the first 90 minutes. Warehouses that were supposed to hold stock for weeks were suddenly empty. Logistics teams scrambled to reroute shipments, pulling inventory from facilities across the country just to fill back orders that kept stacking higher. Here's the part that shook executives to their core. West Coast retail locations hadn't even opened yet. The sun was still coming up in California when sellout alerts started dominating internal dashboards. This wasn't a strong debut. This was an avalanche nobody saw forming. Inside Nike's Beaverton headquarters, emergency calls were already being arranged. Reports suggest CFO Matthew Friend spent hours glued to live data streams, watching numbers spike in ways that defied every model the company had built. Projections for the entire first week were shattered before lunch on day one. By the 72-hour mark, the picture became undeniable. Shedeur Sanders hadn't just outperformed expectations. He had crushed sales records that took other rookies entire seasons to approach. Athletes with years of NFL highlights and Pro Bowl selections watched a 22-year-old blow past their merchandise numbers without ever stepping onto a regular season field. And the pressure didn't stay internal for long. Multiple sources claim Phil Knight himself demanded answers. When the founder of Nike, a man who built empires around athlete endorsements, personally calls in asking what went wrong with infrastructure, that tells you everything about the magnitude of what just happened. One insider summed it up perfectly. This demand was off the charts in ways we've never seen before. Another reportedly joked that they thought they signed a quarterback, but ended up signing a cultural event. The humor masked genuine shock. Emergency meetings multiplied. Executives who initially viewed Sanders as a promising long-term investment suddenly realized they were sitting on something far more immediate. This wasn't a slow-build prospect. This was a market-moving force already reshaping priorities inside Nike's highest offices. Internal documents from those chaotic first days paint a vivid picture. Inventory projections had to be rewritten. Manufacturing timelines accelerated. Retail partners who had ordered conservatively were suddenly begging for larger allocations. The ripple effects touched every corner of Nike's operation. But the craziest part wasn't the speed of the sellout. It was the variety. Jerseys disappeared first, predictably, then hoodies, then hats, then accessories nobody expected to move at that pace. Buyers weren't just grabbing one item and leaving. They were building entire collections. Average cart values reportedly doubled initial forecasts. Social media amplified everything. Videos of long lines outside flagship stores spread across platforms within hours. Unboxing clips racked up millions of views before the first business day ended. Influencers who hadn't been paid a dime organically showcased their Sanders gear, fueling a hype loop that kept feeding itself. Nike's paid marketing hadn't even fully kicked in yet. The organic buzz alone was generating numbers that most campaigns dream about achieving with massive budgets. This wasn't manufactured virality. It was genuine cultural demand exploding in real time. For competitors watching from the outside, the message landed hard. This wasn't just a rookie having a lucky moment. This was proof that something fundamental had shifted in how fans engage with athlete brands. The old rules no longer applied, and the athlete rewriting them was just getting started. Because the frenzy at Nike wasn't random. It didn't appear out of nowhere. Shedeur Sanders had been building toward this moment for years. Every social post, every interview, every calculated decision about how he presented himself to the world was a brick in a foundation most people never noticed being constructed. The explosion didn't create the brand, it revealed it. And to understand how Sanders engineered this moment, you have to go back before the NFL buzz, before the draft hype, before the national spotlight ever found him. You have to see where the blueprint actually began. Most people hear the name and immediately think of his father, Deion Sanders, prime time, one of the flashiest, most dominant athletes in NFL history, a two-sport legend whose confidence bordered on mythology. Growing up in that shadow would crush most people. The comparisons, the expectations, the constant reminder that your father already conquered worlds you're just entering. Shedeur didn't shrink from it, he leaned into it. From an early age, insiders say Shedeur understood something most athletes miss entirely. Talent alone doesn't build empires. Visibility does, identity does, the ability to make people care about your story beyond the scoreboard does. He watched his father turn athletic excellence into cultural permanence and absorbed every lesson. But here's the twist nobody expected. Shedeur didn't just copy the playbook, he modernized it. Where Deion dominated through television and traditional media, Shedeur recognized that the new battlefield was digital. Social platforms, direct fan engagement, content that felt personal instead of polished. His college years became a laboratory. At Jackson State, playing for his father, Shedeur started building an audience that had nothing to do with draft projections or highlight rankings. He documented everything: practices, travel days, conversations with teammates. Moments that made him feel human instead of untouchable. While other quarterbacks focused solely on film and footwork, Shedeur treated content like a second job, not in a scattered way. In a strategic, intentional way that suggested someone much older was guiding his decisions. Every post served a purpose. Every caption reinforced an identity. Every behind-the-scenes clip invited fans deeper into his world. The transfer to Colorado amplified everything. Suddenly, Shedeur wasn't just playing at a small HBCU program. He was in the Big 12, national television, prime-time slots. And his audience, already conditioned to follow him closely, exploded alongside the exposure. But the brilliance wasn't just showing up on bigger stages. It was maintaining authenticity while scaling. Athletes often lose themselves when attention spikes. They retreat behind PR teams and carefully manage statements. Shedeur did the opposite. He got louder. More visible, more unapologetically himself. The jewelry became a signature. Chains and watches on the field that traditionalists criticized but younger fans adored. The confidence in interviews raised eyebrows among old-school analysts but generated viral clip after viral clip. He didn't fit neatly into the mold of what a franchise quarterback was supposed to look and sound like. And that friction created attention. Critics called it arrogance. Supporters called it self-belief. Either way, people were talking. And in the attention economy, that conversation is the currency that matters most. What separated Shedeur from other hyped prospects was consistency. This wasn't a persona that appeared during draft season. It had been built over years. Fans who discovered him in 2024 could scroll back through years of content and see the same energy, the same messaging, the same identity. That consistency created trust. Audiences believed in him because he never seemed to be performing. He seemed to genuinely be that confident, that ambitious, that comfortable in his own skin. Whether that's entirely authentic or carefully cultivated almost doesn't matter. The perception became reality. By the time the NFL draft arrived, Shedeur Sanders wasn't just a quarterback prospect. He was a brand waiting to launch. The infrastructure was already in place. The audience already primed. The identity already cemented in the minds of millions. Nike didn't create that foundation. They recognized it. When negotiations began, insiders say Nike understood they weren't just signing athletic potential. They were acquiring cultural equity that most rookies spend entire careers trying to build. The deal that emerged reflected that understanding. Performance incentives, merchandise royalties, early discussions around equity opportunities that are almost unheard of for incoming rookies. Nike wasn't betting on what Shedeur might become. They were paying for what he already was, and here's the kicker. Even with aggressive projections, even with internal belief that this partnership could outperform typical rookie deals, Nike still underestimated. They saw the potential. They didn't fully grasp the scale, because Shedeur hadn't just built a following, he had built a community. People who felt personally connected to his journey. People who wanted him to win and wanted to wear his gear as a way of signaling that support. The relationship between Shedeur and his audience wasn't transactional. It was emotional. That emotional connection is what separates merchandise buyers from brand ambassadors. And it's what made the launch feel less like a product drop and more like a cultural moment. But building the audience was only half the equation. The other half was understanding how to talk to them. How to create content that felt like conversation instead of advertising. How to maintain relevance across platforms that change faster than most athletes can adapt. Shedeur didn't just understand social media, he mastered it. And that mastery is what turned casual followers into devoted fans willing to crash servers on launch day. Most athletes treat social media like a chore, something their agents tell them to do. Post a highlight, thank the fans, share a sponsorship, keep it safe. Keep it boring, keep it forgettable. Shedeur Sanders approached it like a business. Long before draft analysts started debating his arm strength, Shedeur was studying engagement patterns. What times generated the most interaction? What formats held attention longest? What types of content made people comment instead of just scroll past? He wasn't guessing. He was engineering. The results showed. His follower counts grew steadily, but more importantly, his engagement rate stayed unusually high. Followers didn't just accumulate. They participated. They shared. They defended him in comment sections. They created fan edits and compilation videos without being asked. That level of organic advocacy is almost impossible to manufacture. Brands spend millions trying to generate the kind of grassroots support that Shedeur built through consistent, authentic content over years. His strategy centered on access. While most high-profile athletes maintain distance, Shedeur invited audiences behind the curtain. Training sessions, locker room moments, travel vlogs that felt like you were riding alongside him. The content wasn't overproduced or polished to sterility. It had texture. It felt real. That realness resonated especially with Generation Z audiences who have spent their entire lives filtering out traditional advertising. They can spot inauthenticity instantly. They reject anything that feels like a pitch, but Shedeur never felt like he was selling. He felt like he was sharing. The distinction matters enormously. When he eventually did promote products, his audience didn't recoil. They leaned in because the relationship had been established. The trust had been earned. Endorsements didn't feel like interruptions. They felt like natural extensions of a personality they already supported. His content also demonstrated remarkable range. One day, he'd post intense workout footage that appealed to football purists. The next day, he'd share fashion content that resonated with streetwear communities. Then he'd drop something funny and self-aware that reminded everyone he's still a 22-year-old having fun. That range prevented audience fatigue. People didn't get bored following him because they never knew exactly what was coming next. The unpredictability kept engagement high without sacrificing the core identity that held everything together. Shedeur also understood platform differences in ways that many athletes still don't. Content that worked on Instagram didn't just get copied directly to TikTok. Formats were adjusted, lengths modified, tones calibrated to match what each platform's algorithm and audience expected. This wasn't accidental. This was someone studying the game. Treating content creation with the same seriousness he brought to studying defensive coverages. The attention to detail separated him from peers who saw social media as an afterthought instead of a strategic advantage. Collaboration expanded his reach further. Shedeur regularly engaged with creators outside the sports world. Musicians, fashion influencers, gaming personalities. Each collaboration introduced him to new audiences who might never watch a football game, but now recognized his face and associated it with cool. That cross-pollination is exactly what traditional sports marketing struggles to achieve. Most campaigns stay siloed within sports audiences. Shedeur broke those walls through relationships that felt genuine instead of transactional. His comment section activity also stood out. Unlike celebrities who post and disappear, Shedeur frequently responded to fans, not just with generic thanks, but with actual engagement, inside jokes, playful banter, acknowledgement of loyal followers by name. Those interactions created superfans, people who felt personally seen by someone they admired. And superfans don't just buy merchandise. They evangelize, they recruit, they become unpaid marketing forces far more effective than any advertisement. By the time Nike officially announced the partnership, Shedeur's audience was already primed. The announcement didn't introduce him to the market. It gave an established community a new way to show support. The merchandise became a badge of membership in a club that already existed. This is why the launch exploded so dramatically. Nike wasn't creating demand from scratch. They were opening a valve that had been building pressure for years. All those followers, all those comments. All that accumulated goodwill suddenly had an outlet, and the audience showed up ready to spend. Critics sometimes dismiss social media influence as shallow, just numbers on a screen. But Shedeur proved those numbers translate directly into real-world impact. Servers crashing, inventory vanishing, revenue records shattering. All because a young quarterback understood that attention, properly cultivated, becomes economic power. The digital foundation made everything else possible. Without those years of content creation, the Nike launch would have been just another rookie merchandise drop. Solid, respectable, forgettable. Instead, it became a cultural moment that forced an entire industry to reconsider its assumptions. But even the most engaged audience needs something to rally around. A visual identity that captures the essence of what they're supporting. For Shedeur Sanders, that identity crystallized into 2 letters and a crown that would soon appear everywhere. Every legendary athlete brand has an icon. Jordan has the Jumpman. Federer has the RF. Brady had the TB12. These symbols transcend the sports they emerged from and become cultural shorthand for excellence, ambition, and identity. For Shedeur Sanders, that symbol is the SS crown. The logo didn't happen overnight. Sources inside Nike's design division say more than 15 different versions were developed before Shedeur gave final approval. Sketches ranged from aggressive and angular to sleek and minimal. Each iteration was tested against a simple question. Does this feel like Shedeur? The final design strikes a careful balance. Interlocking SS letters framed with subtle crown imagery. Clean enough to work across product categories. Distinctive enough to be instantly recognizable even at small sizes. The crown element nods to royalty, ambition, and self-belief without feeling gaudy or overdone. But here's what made the logo resonate beyond aesthetics. It told a story. The crown references Shedeur's public persona. The confidence, the jewelry, the unapologetic self-assurance that divides opinion but always generates attention. Wearing the SS crown isn't just wearing a quarterback's merchandise. It's signaling alignment with a mindset, ambition, boldness, the belief that you belong at the top. For younger consumers especially, that message hits different. Generation Z grew up in an era where self-promotion isn't shameful. It's expected. Confidence isn't arrogance. It's survival. Shedeur embodies values his generation already holds. The logo crystallizes those values into something wearable. The design team also carefully navigated the day-in connection. The crown imagery echoes prime time's legendary swagger without leaning too heavily on nostalgia. This isn't a son trading on his father's name. This is an heir establishing his own throne. That distinction matters. Athletes who live in parental shadows often struggle to build independent brands. Every accomplishment gets filtered through comparison. Every setback invites questions about whether they truly belong. Shedeur's logo asserts ownership. His crown, his kingdom, his legacy to build. Within days of the launch, the SS crown started appearing everywhere, not just on official Nike products. Fan-made versions popped up across social media. Street artists incorporated the design into murals. Fashion influencers paired Sanders' gear with luxury pieces, positioning the logo alongside brands that cost 10 times as much. That organic adoption is what separates forgettable merchandise from cultural symbols. Nike can push products through distribution channels. They can't force people to genuinely embrace imagery. The SS crown crossed that threshold almost immediately. Music communities picked it up next. Hip-hop artists were spotted wearing Sanders gear in studio sessions and music videos. The crossover wasn't orchestrated by marketing teams. It happened because the logo resonated with creative communities who value confidence, ambition, and style. Fashion publications started covering the phenomenon. Articles analyzed how Sanders gear was being styled alongside high-end streetwear. The SS crown wasn't being treated like typical sports merchandise relegated to game days and gym sessions. It was being integrated into everyday fashion statements. That lifestyle adoption is the holy grail of athlete branding. When people wear your logo not because of your sport, but because of what you represent, you've transcended athletic merchandise. You've become a brand in the truest sense. Comparisons to Jordan's Jumpman started circulating. Some dismissed them as premature. Jordan had championships, rings, decades of dominance. Shedeur hadn't played a regular season snap, but others argued the comparison wasn't about athletic achievement. It was about cultural velocity. The Jumpman took years to achieve the ubiquity it now enjoys. The SS crown was achieving cultural penetration at a pace that even Nike's most optimistic projections hadn't anticipated. Whether that sustains remains to be seen, but the early trajectory was undeniable. The logo also gave fans something to unite around. Before the launch, supporting Shedeur meant following his content and defending him in comment sections. After the launch, support became visible, physical, wearable proof that you were part of the movement. That visibility multiplied the cultural impact. When enough people wear the same symbol, it stops being individual expression and becomes collective identity. The SS crown started appearing in crowds at college football games, NFL stadiums, basketball arenas, music festivals. Each sighting reinforced the perception that something bigger was happening. Nike's marketing teams quickly recognized what they had. Internal presentations started positioning the SS crown not as rookie merchandise, but as a potential cornerstone brand within the company's athlete portfolio. The language shifted from cautious optimism to aggressive expansion planning. Logos alone don't guarantee success. The real question was whether the audience attached to that symbol would translate into sustainable purchasing power. Early indicators suggested yes, but the demographic breakdown of those early buyers told an even more interesting story, because the people showing up to buy SS crown merchandise weren't who anyone expected. Sports merchandise has a predictable customer profile: men between 25 and 45, hardcore fans who watch every game, people buying jerseys for themselves or their kids, the same demographic that has powered sports retail for decades. Shedeur Sanders shattered that profile entirely. When Nike's analytics teams dug into the early purchase data, what they found stunned even the optimists. Generation Z buyers, people aged 18 to 26, represented a disproportionate share of sales. These weren't traditional NFL merchandise consumers. Many of them had never bought a jersey in their lives. They showed up for Shedeur. The Gen Z surge makes sense when you understand how this generation discovers athletes. They don't wait for Sunday broadcasts. They don't rely on ESPN highlights. They find athletes on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. They form attachments based on personality and content, not just statistics and wins. Shedeur had been speaking their language for years. His content lived where they lived. His confidence matched their values. His story, a young man betting on himself and refusing to apologize for ambition, resonated with a generation told they're entitled, but knowing they're just determined. Buying his merchandise wasn't about football fandom. It was about identity alignment, supporting someone who represents what they believe in, wearing the SS crown as a statement that confidence isn't something to apologize for. But the Gen Z numbers were only part of the story. The gender breakdown shocked the industry even more. Women accounted for nearly 40% of early purchases. In traditional sports apparel, women typically represent 15 to 20% of buyers, often purchasing gifts for men rather than themselves. Shedeur's launch flipped that pattern dramatically. Women were buying for themselves, wearing his gear as personal fashion statements. Industry analysts point to several factors. Shedeur's aesthetic appeal obviously plays a role. But more importantly, his brand doesn't feel exclusively masculine. The confidence he projects isn't aggressive or alienating. It's aspirational in ways that resonate across gender lines. His content also features women prominently: family members, friends, collaborators. The world he presents isn't a boys' club. It's inclusive without making inclusivity the point. That natural diversity in his content translates to diverse purchasing. Fashion influencers amplified the trend. Women with massive followings started styling Sanders gear in ways that demonstrated its versatility. Cropped jerseys paired with skirts, hoodies layered over dresses, the SS crown appearing alongside designer handbags. Each post validated the merchandise as fashion-forward rather than just sports-adjacent. Nike's women's marketing teams scrambled to capitalize. Internal discussions reportedly shifted toward developing female-specific Sanders product lines. Cuts and colorways designed for women rather than adapted from men's designs. The opportunity was too clear to ignore. International numbers added another layer of surprise. Demand from Europe and Asia rivaled what Nike typically sees for global sneaker collaborations. In markets where American football barely registers as a spectator sport, Shedeur Sanders merchandise was moving at unprecedented rates. This is where the cultural brand distinction becomes crucial. International buyers weren't purchasing NFL merchandise. They were purchasing lifestyle product associated with an influencer they followed online. Football was almost irrelevant to the transaction. Personality, style, and cultural cachet drove the sales. Nike's global teams recognized the implications immediately. Shedeur Sanders could potentially be marketed worldwide in ways most NFL players never could. His appeal wasn't locked to American sports culture. It transcended regional boundaries because it was built on universal values. Confidence translates across languages. Ambition doesn't need subtitles. Style communicates instantly regardless of nationality. The brand Shedeur built wasn't American football specific. It was globally accessible because it was human. Resale market activity confirmed the unusual buyer profile. Platforms like StockX and GOAT reported Sanders merchandise trading at premiums typically reserved for limited edition sneakers. Collectors who usually chase streetwear drops were suddenly bidding on quarterback merchandise. The crossover was unprecedented. Sports apparel and hype culture streetwear had always existed in separate lanes. Shedeur merged them. Wearing his gear became cool in circles that had never cared about athlete endorsements. Social proof accelerated everything. Once celebrities outside sports started wearing SS Crown merchandise, the floodgates opened. Musicians, actors, and influencers who normally wouldn't touch NFL gear were spotted in Sanders' product. Each sighting validated the crossover and attracted new demographics. The data told a story Nike hadn't fully anticipated. This wasn't a traditional athlete merchandise launch. This was a cultural brand breaking into markets the company had struggled to penetrate for years. And if the buying patterns surprised Nike, imagine what competitors felt watching from the outside. Because as SS Crown merchandise flew off shelves and crashed servers, executives at Adidas, Under Armour, Puma, and New Balance realized they had missed something massive, and their response would reshape how the entire industry approaches young athlete partnerships. The moment sales numbers leaked beyond Nike's walls, panic spread fast. Adidas felt it first. Already struggling to regain relevance in North America after years of brand missteps, the German giant reportedly called an emergency strategy meeting within 24 hours of the Sanders launch. According to insiders, the conversation was blunt and uncomfortable. Nike saw Sanders first. We all missed him. How do we make sure this never happens again? The questions that followed were even more pointed. Why weren't scouts tracking his social media growth? Why didn't anyone flag his cultural appeal before the Nike deal closed? How did an entire company dedicated to athlete partnerships let a generational marketing talent slip through? Executives scrambled to identify young athletes who could be fast-tracked into endorsement pipelines. College quarterbacks with growing social followings suddenly received calls from Adidas representatives. The urgency was palpable. Under Armour hit similar alarms. Known historically for swinging big on rookie talent, they had built their brand on early bets that competitors considered risky. Yet they had missed Shedeur entirely. Reports suggest Under Armour accelerated scouting timelines dramatically, pushing teams to identify and lock up promising college athletes before Nike or Adidas could circle. The desperation extended to athletes still deep in NCAA careers. Brands quietly began exploring conversations with sophomores and even freshmen, attempting to build relationships years before nil eligibility would traditionally matter. The Sanders effect changed timelines across the industry. New Balance entered the scramble from an unexpected angle. Rather than competing directly for football talent, executives reportedly began examining unconventional partnerships, athletes with crossover appeal, personalities with cultural influence beyond their primary sports. The company recognized that raw athletic ability alone wasn't enough anymore. Cultural relevance had become the differentiator. Puma allegedly went even further, re-evaluating its entire North American strategy. Internal reviews questioned whether the company's existing athlete portfolio aligned with emerging consumer demographics. If Gen Z buyers and female consumers were the growth markets, did Puma's current endorsement speak to those audiences? The questions felt existential. For years, endorsement battles moved incrementally. Brands fought over established stars, offered competitive contracts, and hoped for championships to boost sales. The rhythm was predictable. Everyone waited patiently for the next wave of proven talent. Shedeur Sanders shattered that rhythm completely. His launch proved that waiting for an athlete to establish themselves on the field meant potentially missing their cultural window entirely. By the time traditional metrics confirmed greatness, the marketing opportunity might already belong to someone else. This wasn't just a competitive loss for Nike's rivals. It was a philosophical reckoning. The old model assumed athletic performance drove commercial value. Sanders demonstrated that cultural connection could precede and potentially eclipse athletic achievement. Adidas reportedly commissioned internal studies examining how Sanders built his audience and whether the approach could be replicated with other athletes. The findings were reportedly humbling. His success wasn't based on a single viral moment or lucky timing. It was built through years of consistent effort that most athletes weren't willing to invest. You couldn't manufacture another Shedeur Sanders. You had to find someone who had already done the work themselves. That realization made the talent search even more competitive. Companies dispatched scouts not just to games, but to social media platforms. Follower counts became scouting metrics alongside 40 times and vertical leaps. Engagement rates mattered as much as completion percentages. The industry transformed practically overnight. Marketing departments that previously operated separately from athletic scouting suddenly demanded integration. Endorsement decisions that once took months compressed into weeks. The fear of missing the next Sanders made everyone move faster. Some critics argued the panic was overblown. Sanders was a unique case, they claimed. The son of a legend with built-in name recognition and advantages most athletes don't have. Replicating his success would be nearly impossible. But others countered that dismissing him as an outlier missed the point. The same dismissals happened with Jordan before the Jumpman took over the world. The same skepticism met LeBron before his business empire overshadowed his contracts. Generational talents always seem impossible to replicate until the next one emerges. Nike wasn't just celebrating a successful launch. They were potentially sitting on the next athlete brand to reshape an entire industry. And every competitor knew that if they didn't adapt quickly, the gap would only widen. The scramble continues today. College athletes with growing platforms receive pitches that would have seemed absurd 5 years ago. Brands offer deals based on social influence as much as athletic potential. The boundaries between athlete and influencer have blurred permanently. Shedeur Sanders didn't just beat the competition. He forced them to redefine competition itself. But all the cultural buzz and commercial success in the world means nothing if performance doesn't follow. And that's where the story gets complicated. Because hype without substance always collapses eventually. The question hanging over everything is whether Shedeur can actually play at the level his brand suggests. Jerseys don't stay on shelves if the name on the back doesn't show up on Sundays. Fans have sharp instincts for empty hype. They can sense when marketing exceeds reality. And when that gap becomes obvious, loyalty evaporates fast. The coolest logo in the world can't survive a quarterback who looks lost when the lights come on. Shedeur Sanders understands this pressure better than anyone. His entire commercial success is built on confidence. If his on-field performance undermines that confidence, the whole structure shakes. So what do the football people actually say? Coaches who have worked with Shedeur describe his practice habits as elite, not just talented. Disciplined, he arrives early, studies film obsessively, asks questions that suggest understanding far beyond typical young quarterbacks. The work ethic matches the swagger. During his college career, the statistics back the reputation. At Colorado, he posted completion percentages that ranked among the nation's best. His touchdown-to-interception ratio demonstrated decision-making maturity. Deep balls dropped with precision. Timing routes hit with anticipation. The film showed a quarterback who processed information quickly and executed confidently. Draft analysts noted his poise under pressure. When plays broke down, Shedeur didn't panic. He extended, found secondary options, and delivered throws that rescued drives. That composure separates prospects with potential from prospects who translate. The 2025 NFL Draft validated the evaluation. Selected second overall by the Cleveland Browns, Shedeur entered a franchise desperately searching for quarterback stability. The pick wasn't charity based on name recognition. It was an organization betting its future on his ability. Training camp reports have been encouraging. Insiders describe him as calm but intense, vocal in huddles without being overbearing, commanding respect through preparation rather than pedigree. Veterans who initially approached skeptically have reportedly come away impressed. His arm talent translates to the professional level. NFL windows are tighter, defenders faster, and schemes more complex. Early observations suggest Shedeur processes the increased speed without hesitation. Throws that looked easy in college still look easy against NFL competition. More importantly, he handles adversity without crumbling. Bad practices don't spiral into bad weeks. Criticism doesn't shatter confidence. The mental resilience that built his brand appears genuine rather than performed. This matters enormously for commercial longevity. Fans forgive struggles if they believe in the person experiencing them. Shedeur's authentic connection with his audience provides cushion that pure hype wouldn't. When he faces inevitable rookie challenges, supporters won't abandon him instantly. They'll rally. That loyalty creates space to grow. First-year quarterbacks rarely dominate immediately. Learning curves are expected. What determines long-term trajectory is how the athlete responds to early adversity. Shedeur's track record suggests he responds by working harder, not retreating. His playing style also generates highlight potential. Shedeur isn't a game manager. He pushes the ball downfield, attacks tight windows, and creates plays that generate viral moments. Even in losses, spectacular throws give fans something to celebrate and share. That highlight generation feeds his broader brand continuously. Every Instagram-worthy play becomes content. Every game-changing moment reinforces the narrative of excellence. The football and the marketing become mutually reinforcing. Critics still exist, of course. Some question whether confidence crosses into arrogance that might alienate teammates. Others wonder if the media attention will distract from preparation. A few scouts still doubt his arm strength for cold-weather late-season games. Fair questions. But they're the same questions asked about virtually every hyped quarterback prospect ever. Russell Wilson was too short. Patrick Mahomes was too undisciplined. Josh Allen was too inaccurate. The concerns didn't prevent success. Shedeur enters the league with legitimate tools, excellent preparation, and a support system designed to maximize his development. His father understands the NFL grind intimately. Coaches Cleveland has assembled bring experience developing young passers. The infrastructure around him is solid. The results won't be immediate. Expecting a rookie to dominate from week one sets unrealistic benchmarks, but expecting steady improvement, competitive games, and flashes of the talent that made him a top pick is entirely reasonable. And here's the wild card. Unlike most rookies, Shedeur has millions of fans already invested in his success. When he inevitably faces struggles, his audience won't just hope he succeeds. They'll loudly support him through it. That energy creates an environment where growth feels possible. He's not just a quarterback trying to prove he belongs. He's a movement trying to justify the belief of millions who already believe. That pressure could crush someone, but everything about how Shedeur Sanders built his career suggests he doesn't buckle under weight. He adds it to his shoulders and climbs anyway. Still, pressure is relentless. It doesn't care about past accomplishments or future potential. It demands results in the present. And as Shedeur transitions from cultural phenomenon to NFL quarterback, the weight of expectations will test him like nothing before. History offers cautionary tales for anyone paying attention. Plenty of athletes have exploded onto scenes with massive hype, record-breaking merchandise sales, and seemingly unstoppable momentum. Then reality intervened. Injuries, struggles, cultural trends shifting. What felt permanent turned out to be a moment. Shedeur Sanders knows this better than critics assume. He's watched careers rise and fall. He's seen how quickly narratives change when performance dips. He understands that the crown he wears is heavy, and many people would love to see it fall. The skeptics have their arguments ready. Rookie sensations often cool off once the league adjusts. Defensive coordinators study film and find weaknesses. The novelty of the brand fades as newer stars emerge. What feels unstoppable in year one rarely survives year three unchanged. Some view the resale frenzy and viral clips as temporary phenomena, perfect storms of timing, attention, and novelty that inevitably settle. The cultural moment was real, they admit, but sustainable dominance requires more than a strong debut. Those concerns aren't irrational. The sports landscape is littered with players who peaked early. The commercial landscape is filled with brands that burned bright before fading into irrelevance. Nothing guarantees longevity, but dismissing Shedeur as another flash in the pan ignores the evidence of how he built his platform. Unlike athletes who stumbled into viral moments, Shedeur constructed his brand deliberately over years. Every piece of content reinforced a consistent identity. Every engagement deepened audience relationships. The foundation wasn't luck, it was architecture. That infrastructure provides resilience. When challenges arise, and they will, Shedeur has years of connection to draw upon. His audience isn't following a trending topic. They're following a person they feel they know. That emotional investment doesn't evaporate quickly. His understanding of modern media also provides adaptability. Platforms change constantly. Attention spans shift. What works today might not work tomorrow. Shedeur has demonstrated the ability to evolve his content strategy as the landscape changes. He's not married to a single format or approach. That flexibility matters. Athletes who become rigid get left behind when culture moves. Shedeur has shown willingness to experiment, take risks, and adjust based on what resonates. His brand feels dynamic rather than static. The authenticity question looms, of course. Critics argue that carefully curated confidence isn't the same as genuine confidence, that the persona might crack under sustained NFL pressure when cameras catch frustrated moments and losses pile up. Maybe, but the counter-argument is simple. Shedeur has been in spotlight situations his entire life. Growing up as Dayan's son meant constant observation. College football at Colorado meant national attention. He's been tested before. He's been doubted before. He's still here. His father's guidance provides another advantage. Dayan navigated decades of extreme fame without losing himself. He made mistakes, but emerged with legacy intact. That institutional knowledge of how to handle the pressures of athletic stardom exists within Shedeur's closest circle. The financial foundation also protects against desperation moves. With Nike income secured and additional partnerships likely, Shedeur doesn't need to chase every opportunity or compromise his brand for short-term gains. He can be selective in ways that less secure athletes cannot. All of these factors suggest staying power. Not guaranteed success, but genuine structural advantages that most hyped rookies don't possess. The ultimate test remains performance. If Shedeur plays well, the brand will grow. If he struggles, the brand will face stress. That's the inescapable reality of athlete marketing. The court or the field remains the foundation. But here's what skeptics miss. Even if on-field success takes time to materialize, the cultural brand has already established itself. The SS crown already means something to millions of people. That meaning doesn't disappear with a few losses. Jordan wasn't a champion immediately. His brand survived the years before rings because the identity was bigger than any single season. Shedeur has built similar structural resilience. The movement he represents transcends any individual game. Time will tell whether he becomes a generational icon or a memorable moment. No one can predict with certainty how careers unfold, but the dismissals of his potential seem premature when you examine how intentionally he's built toward this point. The weight of the crown is real, but so is the preparation to carry it. Shedeur Sanders didn't just launch merchandise. He detonated a cultural earthquake that forced the most powerful companies in sports to question everything they thought they knew. In 72 hours, he shattered sales records that took other stars' entire careers to approach. He crashed servers, emptied warehouses, and sent competitors scrambling into emergency meetings. He attracted buyers who never cared about football and expanded markets that had ignored NFL merchandise for years. None of it was accidental. Every post, every video, Every confident interview was a brick in a foundation years in the making. When Nike opened the doors, an army was already waiting to rush through. The SS crown is more than a logo now. It's a symbol of ambition, authenticity, and the power of believing in yourself so loudly that others can't help but believe too. Whether Shedeur Sanders becomes the next Jordan-level icon or faces challenges that test his rising empire, one thing is already certain. He's changed the game. The old rules of athlete branding are gone, a new playbook is being written, and right now, Shedeur Sanders is holding the pen.